Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Thursday. And we have Dr. Dennis Carroll live today. And we're talking about Spiderwoman and dream witches. Very interesting topic. So looking forward to that indeed. And hello everybody and welcome to our chat and to our show. Very interesting. And I just quickly want to go through just the rest of our schedule for the week. So let me just pull that up. There we go. I want to just maybe go back also through the last few shows we've had. Very, very interesting. Beverly Rhodes on Monday, again, we were speaking about the celebrity switch, talking about vampirism with celebrities, how it works. Very, very interesting indeed. Mini-part series of the Ankara field on solutions. Today, on Tuesday, we spoke about opening up the heart. So catch that. And yeah, like, share, subscribe there, please, guys. We're moving onto that channel as more of the healing aspect. You know, on Arrow, we expose the really nasty stuff and the inconvenient truths. On solutions, we find the solutions that raise our frequency and keep us connected to only the right force, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, yesterday, very interesting, Double Trouble with Jesse again. We spoke about, what did we even speak about? I've even forgotten now. But very interesting. So for 2 shows from yesterday, and then, of course, Dr. Dennis today. Tomorrow, we're doing drop-in with Chanti. I've also potentially got Kathy O'Brien tomorrow evening, round about the same time as now. So please just check the community board and to see. We're just waiting to confirm, but that could well be happening tomorrow as well. And then the solutions rehab, where we replay the older shows. And then, of course, at 6 o'clock Central Africa time, Jerry Marzinski and Jamie J. Very interesting to have the two of them chatting. So we interviewed, we did a pre-recording. It's not a live show, but it will be on Premiere. And then, of course, the Sunday loop. And yeah, without any further ado, guys, I hope you're all well and all getting ready for Christmas, holidays, time with your families. It's always good to do that. So I hope you guys are all gearing up for that. As you can see, I've had no power today, but it's wonderful. It's definitely holiday fever. And all the holiday makers are trekking in, and I'm hibernating in my house. Dennis, how are you? Nice to see you again.
Hello, it's good to be back again, and it's always a pleasure to be with you, Shanti. Definitely, and we enjoy these shows definitely. And you know, we like to explore the field of folklore. That's one of my favorite things to do, and folklore teaches us and tells us about so many interesting things. You know, and I've been interested in folklore my entire life. When I was a kid, a little boy, I would go around, to the old folks and say, tell me a ghost story, tell me a story I want to hear about, The stories are fascinating. And I never outgrew that. As a matter of fact, I was thinking the other day, Shanti, about my grandmother Carroll. She was actually the daughter of a man who she was a Drummond actually before she married a Carroll, and her father came directly off the ship from Scotland, and this woman could tell stories. I mean, she could really, and I think I inherited that definitely from her. And she would tell me when I was like 5 or 6 years old, I guess I was very young. She would tell me a very famous poem that she had learned by heart. She learned it in school, as a matter of fact, when she was a little girl. And the poem is James Whitcomb Riley's very famous Little Orphan Annie. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's a very interesting poem. But there's a line in that poem, and it says this. It says, the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the goblins that get you if you don't watch out. And I had to say, when I heard that many years ago, I said, I've got to find out what these witch tales are, you know. I got to really explore this avenue, definitely. And that's been what I've been doing for my entire life. And the witches are definitely very, you know, interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen that very famous movie. I think it was British movie, The Witches, with Angelica Houston, who was great actress. Great movie. I know we've all probably seen that. It's a great children's. It's written from a children's book that Richard, I think, Dahl did.
Wasn't
actually.
it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's called The
I've
Witches.
seen The Witches.
Yeah, and there's a
Is it
great
not The
movie. If
Witches
you've
of
never,
Eastwick?
yeah, if you've never seen it, it's a great movie. But I think Ronald Dahl is the one that wrote the story about it. Very famous writer of children's books. But anyway, he laid out a whole thing. This was many years before Harry Potter and all that. He laid out a world of witches to think about how they acted, the things that they did, and they're all very old, ugly women that wear wigs and you know, they hide themselves behind human mask, you know. And that's the interesting thing about witches, though. And I've always wondered about this, Chantelle, you know. The thing about witches is that witchcraft is real. We know witchcraft is real, without a doubt. We have very much a vast field of experts that will tell you that it is real. It does happen. And here's the thing about the witch, very much like werewolves and vampires, the witch could be your next door neighbor, you know. And I've had a lot of cases, and this is true now. I've had a lot of cases. I have a consultation service, you know, and people come to me with their problems of paranormal and stuff like that. I have had tons of cases where people call me about their neighbors. Their neighbors are practicing witchcraft or they're into voodoo or stuff like that. And they're very worried about these things. And I don't blame them to a certain extent. I guess I would be worried too if my neighbors were doing stuff like that. Because here's the bad thing about it. What you do with witchcraft and all that stuff does not usually stay confined to one area. It can bleed over into your yard or into your property or into your life. And that's the way it goes with witchcraft. And that's what I think the people of old times, Chanty, were really concerned about. The witches, you know, and what they might be up to, the bad things that they were doing. Because, you know, you've heard me talk about before about the witch jars that people would bury on their property. And you being an old farm gal, you know what I'm talking about. The farmers believed in this stuff. They had to go with that protection against these things that would destroy their crops or make their cows go dry or whatever the situation was. The hens would quit laying. You know, you had a problem. And a lot of times they blame the witches for this kind of stuff, you know, hey, you know, witches out to get me or something, you know. So they use protection against this. They believe very much in the protection. And every now and then I will get somebody that says, hey, I dug this jar up on my property. What should I do about it? You know, and they tell me, you know, what's in it. I immediately know it's a witch jar. And I said, well, just put it back where you found it. That's a good idea. Just leave it alone, you know, and because it was put there for a reason. But in the witch jar, you had some very interesting items, Chanty. Like if you were going to make a witch jar tomorrow, you would take maybe a lock of your hair and put in it. You would take a page out of the Bible and put in there. You would take salt and put in there. There are different ingredients that you would put in there as protective things. You know, might be like a silver charm would go in there. Different things that you feel like would protect you. And, you know, the Native Americans, now listen to this. This goes through many different cultures. The Native Americans wore what was called a medicine bag. And it was a little bag that they wore around their necks that protected them from evil. And it had little items in it, like, you know, sweet grass or maybe sage, different things they had in this little medicine bag. And they did not leave home without their medicine bag. They always wore it, you know, a little bag around their neck. So this goes through many different, and this happens in Africa. They have what in parts of Africa, they have medicine belts, like we will call them medicine belts, or witch belts as they're called. They had items that hung on these belts that they would wear to protect themselves. So everybody's looking for protection against witchcraft. That's a fascinating aspect of all this, you know. This is how much they believed and feared in these things. They were very afraid of what these things could do because, like I said, here's the thing about witchcraft. It's real. And it does go into many different areas, and there is bad witchcraft and supposedly good witchcraft. But you never hear that much about the good witchcraft. You always hear about the bad witchcraft because that's the way it goes. You never hear about good news. You always hear bad news. That's what they report on, and that's the way it goes in folklore and stuff like that. They're always telling you, warning you different things about, you know, you need to watch out for this. You need to watch out for that. You need to wear this to protect yourself. Did you know? I don't know if you know this, and this was very prevalent amongst German and Scandinavian families, that the mother, before she would send her child out for the day, she would tie a red string around their waist. This was protection against witchcraft. That red string that went around, you know. They believed that the color red, that witches did not like red. And they would see that you got something red on today, so you're protected, definitely. So, you know, yeah, you got a little red on there. It's orange. Okay, yeah, it looks red over here. But anyway, that's what they believed in. They believed in color magic and stuff like that. Yeah, they believe in color magic, colored candles that did different things and all that. So this is a big part of that as well, you know. So colors were protection against witchcraft. So in the witch jar, you'd put a piece of red cloth or red twine or something like that. So those were the ingredients for these things. And to this day, and I have gone into old places. If you're ever around some old ancestral places, look around, especially up towards the ceiling or in the attic. You might find a witch mark. They would actually mark their houses with witch marks. And your average witch mark looks like a V and an upside down V imposed on it. That was sort of like an upside down W with the W inside of it. It's a witch mark. And they believe that putting this mark on your house protected him. It was like a supernatural lightning rod that kept away the dark powers that were out there. So this is fascinating stuff. The deeper you get into the witch thing, you know, the more you find out is what went on in those times. But the interesting thing about where I live now, like I'm very close, and we talked about this in the first part, I guess you would call it the first part of what we're doing today. This is part 2. The interesting thing about this, I can see the Appalachian Mountains from my front door. Okay, I'm just that close to them. And the tradition runs very deep in these areas of this superstition and this fear of witchcraft and the things that they could do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. 2 aspects of this, and maybe some more if we have time. The spider women and the dream witches. This is really getting into some dark and deep stuff here. The spider witch, and we're going to talk about some owl witches too, by the way. We're going to put them in there too as well. But the spider woman is actually founded in legends of the American indigenous peoples. The American Indians believed in this to a certain extent. And they believed that in every tribe, one woman was born that could do this, that had power. She was a very powerful woman, very much like the medicine man in the tribe, but she was a woman, okay? And I'm not going to say she's a witch. I don't think they actually had words for witches like that, but she would be what we would term something very much like a witch. But this woman usually had powers of healing. She could heal, or she could, you would go to her with your problems and talk to her, sort of like a Dear Abby kind of a thing. You could go to her and talk to your problems, and she would help you to solve your problems, or she would help you with whatever the situation was. She was a medicine woman, you might say, to a certain extent, not like the medicine man, which was another figure in the tribe. But she was and usually she would be the wife of the medicine man. Okay, that's just the way that went. So the whole family was involved in this. But you could go to this woman, and she was a healer. She was someone that could talk to you and counsel you, or whatever the situation was. she held a very important part in the tribe. You know, this was somebody that was looked very highly upon most of the time. And so there was no, you didn't fear this woman. She was there to help you, in that respect. So she was very much like what we call today the root doctors and the hoodoo men and the hoodoo women in the mountains. They were there. They knew the natural remedies. They knew the things you could do to help yourself. They were the ones that could pray for you and do things with you. So that's a very interesting aspect that you had these, and it very much like the shamanistic kind of stuff going on here, in that respect. Um, but where did she kind of turn into what we call the modern day witches now? It was our attitude, our outlook on it. You see somebody doing that, you say, oh, there's something, spooky about that person. There's something kind of evil or dark about that person. Whether they deserve that tag or not, they got tagged with it. That's the way it went, A lot of people if you were different in any way and you didn't fit into the mold, and people were very suspicious of you, and they were very cautious about you, and stories would be told, and rumors and gossip would go on about you. Things could get out of hand very quickly, and you could be tagged a witch, whether you really were one or not. And we talked about this before. This has happened worldwide with the witchcraft trials and all that. And I've told people a lot of this. A lot of people disagree with me, but I think it's true that at least 90% of these so-called witches that were hung, burned, drowned, or whatever the situation, they were not really witches, okay? They were just odd people, maybe. They were just people that, man, some of them were healers. Some of them had, I think, the ability to heal and help people. But see, they feared this. They didn't understand it. And mankind, unfortunately, whatever he does not understand, he wants to usually destroy it. He's scared of it. He wants to get rid of it. That's the way humanity works. To this day, we have that ability, to do this against people that don't fit into the mold we want them to fit into. You're ostracized for that, And that's not good, but that's the way they went. But most of the time in these witchcraft trials, and I've talked about this before, they were just, trying to steal people's property or just get rid of their enemy, whatever. If I didn't like you and you did something to me and I didn't like, and I could really get rid of you by saying you're a witch, and getting people to believe this, they would get rid of you for me. Definitely, that would solve my problem. And a lot of that went on, okay? So we've got to understand that most of these poor women were not witches, okay? Well, not really witches, what we would term witches. Because the real witches, let me say this, the real dark, evil witches are too smart for that kind of stuff. They're not going to get caught, okay? They have powers that protect themselves. They're not going to be at risk. I talked to a man, I was contacted by a man one time that told me that he was living under the curse of the werewolf in his family, that he actually was a werewolf, and that he was like 200 years old. And this man said, I think it's like 230 something years old. I said, well, how in the world did you live this long? He said, by one reason alone, by being very smart with my condition. I was very smart about it. I didn't do stupid stuff. I didn't do foolish things. That has enabled me to live as long as I have lived with this curse, So he was going the smart way about it, if you look at it that way. And if you were going to be something like a vampire, werewolf, witch, or whatever, you better be smart, because you're not going to last long if you're not. That's just the way that goes. And the witches knew this. They were smart women. They knew what they were doing, and they were playing with fire. So they had to be very, very careful. And that's why you have so much secrecy in witchcraft. They had to keep themselves secret. They had to keep what they were doing secret, because it could cost them their lives very quickly if they were discovered doing this stuff. And some of the very important things that they did for themselves would be to acquire this power that they were seeking, this dark power they could do things with. And the number one power that they sought was shapeshifting. If you can shapeshift, you have an immense power at your disposal. You can do things, you know. Just recently, I did a show on the Galipote. You ever heard of that? The Galipote is a cryptid of the Dominican Republic, and it is more like a spiritual creature, and it is the supernatural super shapeshifter. This son of a gun can do anything, Chanti. The Galipote. I'll just have to send you the spelling on that. The Galipote in the Dominican Republic, by the way, is on an island in the Caribbean. Okay. The Galipote can look like a rock if it wants to. It can look like a tree stump. It can look like your next door neighbor. It can look like the boy bagging groceries at your store. I mean, it can be anybody or anything. The Galipote even has vampire-like tendencies. It supposedly will drain the blood of young children. Just a fascinating thing. We'll have to do a show on the Galipote sometime. It's a fascinating thing. But its number one power is the ability to shapeshift into anything. Now, most of the time, these witches that we talk about, especially the Appalachian witches and skinwalkers that people talk about, are kind of limited into what they can turn into and what they can shapeshift into. Your average skinwalker can only turn into maybe a coyote or a wolf or maybe a dog or something like that. It can turn into... But when you get to the guys that we were talking about in the previous show, the dream witches, and they become a dream. They transcend reality. They can shapeshift into almost anything that they want to. And that's why the other skinwalkers are so afraid of them. You know, they have more power than they do. You respect somebody who has more power than you, whether you want to or not. You got to respect them. And that's the way that this goes with dark witchcraft. And the dream witches, and what makes them so fascinating, is they can, of course, appear in your dreams. They can actually manipulate you through your dreams. They can actually attack you in your dreams. I have actually been attacked myself by dark forces in my dreams. Luckily, in my dreams, I was at my right mind. I knew what to do to fight that attack. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people are not ready for that thing. I've talked with people a lot. I've done a lot of counseling on this, and this is nothing but a form of dark astral projection type stuff going on here. What they're doing is sending their consciousness and their spirit out into different areas. You can say the same thing happens with people who are doing remote viewing. When you remote view, you're sort of sending your consciousness out to see something or to learn knowledge or whatever. They're taking this one step further. They're actually doing stuff. They are actually sending not just their consciousness out, but their spiritual being itself into doing these things. So this is what makes them very dangerous, because not just looking at you or prying into what you're doing, but they can actually take action against you in this form. Now, you know, I had a lot of people ask me this over the years, and I have seen a lot of these things with my own eyes. I have seen the spiritual things manifest into the physical reality. This can happen. And when they do that, they become very dangerous, because now they're on your level. They're in your reality, and they can react to you that way. A spirit, and I have been touched by spirits in the past. I had a spirit touch me, the spirit of a woman one time caressed my face. I have been touched by this. This is real, but they can touch you, but there's not a whole lot they can do to you in that form until they manifest into physical reality. The werewolf does this. He starts out as a demonic force, a power that manifests itself into the physical form, into the realm. That's when he can tear you into pieces. That's when he has the ability to do that. So listen to what I'm about to tell you. The spiritual being must attack you spiritually, more so than physically. It can still attack you physically, but not as much and not as strong as he can do it spiritually, because he is a spiritual being. You and I, Chantelle, are physical beings. We can attack people physically if we wanted to, okay? Or take physical action against people. Only in the physical realm can we do this. So we're stuck in our dimension of what we're doing. But some people can transcend those dimensions. They can go from one reality to another. That's what the skinwalkers do. That's what the dream witches do. That's why they say the dream witches become a dream. They go into that reality of dreams and do things. And most of the time, they're not good things. Most of the time, they're not good things they're doing to you, okay? But I've actually talked to people. Now, listen to this. This gets freaky stuff. And I warn people about this. I've actually talked to men and women who have dream lovers. These beings come to them in their dreams and have, make love to them and do things with them and have a relationship with them. This is not good because you're dealing with a spiritual entity and you're a physical entity. You're in two different worlds here. And that's just the beginning of the bad news on this kind of a situation, because most of the time, these are spirits or spiritual beings that are taking advantage of you. They don't have your best interest at heart, put it that way, okay? That's where you get the very famous succubi and incubi type demons that attack people sexually. That's what they're up to. They are actually attacking you, whether you believe it or not. And they can act like they love you or that you're having a relationship with, but they are actually spiritually attacking you. They're taking your spiritual energy from you, like a vampire, okay? They are draining you, and this is hurting you, not just physically, but spiritually too, because you have a spirit in you, and that's what they're attacking. That's what they're dealing with. It gets really freaky. It gets into some very dark territory, and I warn people, be very careful what you're doing here in this situation, because it cannot turn out good for you. Definitely. Most of the time it doesn't when you have a spiritual entity messing around with a physical person. It just doesn't, it comes out bad sometimes, very badly. Although some people say they have relationships with these things, they get attached to them, they are being used spiritually by these things. And it's never good to use anyone or anything, even if you're a spirit or human, okay? That's just the way that works, because you're doing it for very selfish reasons. That's the way that goes. I won't get into the psychology of that, but that's what that means a lot of times. And the dream witches are interesting in this respect because they go into what we call liminal places or spaces. The liminal space is the in-between realities. It's that empty, dark, unknown place in between realities, between the physical and the spiritual or whatever the situation is. It's interdimensional, but it's in between those dimensions, put it that way. And witchcraft deals with a lot of opening dimensional doors to this other reality, to this spiritual aspect of it. And that's where you get a lot of the so-called familiar spirit type things, the demonic forces that supposedly come through. They deal with these dark witches. Every dark, and you got to listen to this very closely, every dark evil witch must have a true demonic familiar. This is her power source. This is where she plugs into the darkness with, okay? You can only do so much as a human being, but when you plug into that power source, you can do a whole lot more. That's where you get the power from the demonic, okay, to do the things you want to do. That's like I told you before, Chanti. You and I could sit around wishing all day long, wishing somebody to die, and nothing's going to happen, okay, because that's just you and me doing that. But what if we plug into a dark power that can get that done? Then things get real interesting, okay? Because then we've got a demon buddy that will help us. He can be our assassin if we want him to. He can make that person's life a living hell if we want him to. We can attack them through our demon buddy because he's got the power that we don't have spiritually to do the things they can do. And that's where their power comes from. And that's why a lot of these witchcraft trials, you hear them talking about you're familiar as this or you're familiar as that. It can take on different forms. It can look like a pig, it can look like a cow, whatever you want that demon wants to look like to fool people into believing it's an animal and not a demon. That's the familiar. Okay. And these witches have a demon buddy. I have actually talked to people, Chantelle. I have known people that say, yes, I have a demon friend. He does whatever I tell him to do, or I do what he tells me to do. And a lot of these people out there that think they are following spirit guides are not really doing that. They are following familiar spirits, or what we would call demonic spirits, that have fooled them into believing that. They have tricked them into believing that they're a force for good, and they're not. This happens a lot, especially in witchcraft and in ghost research. A lot of people contact what they think is, and poor Aunt Harriet that passed on, and it's not Aunt Harriet, okay? It's something masquerading as her to fool you into believing something else altogether. I have this is a big problem in spirit research that people run into. I think Ed and Lorraine Warren ran into this a lot. When they were supposedly, talking to human spirits, they weren't. They were talking to demonic spirits. That's the way that goes. And the demons are very good at this kind of stuff. They're very good at manipulation. That is the number one power of a demon, by the way, manipulation. They are very good at manipulating us for all the wrong reasons. It's never for good stuff. It's always for bad things. That's the way they work. But the dream witches know that. So they're in conclusion. They have these demon buddies to empower them to do the things they want to do. So that's what enables them to walk between worlds, to exist between realities, to become dream. The Aborigines in Australia talk about certain people like that. They are what they call dream people. They go into dreamland. You've heard that term before. Dreamland is that in-between place between reality and the spirit world. It is a liminal. We call these places liminal spaces because they are unknown places, in-between places. And I think, a lot of people, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I've thought about this a lot over the years, a lot of people that supposedly disappear in our world without a trace may fall into these liminal spaces. And that may be what their fate is. They may disappear that way, And there's a lot of cases out there like that. There's no actual known explanation for disappearances. What if they fall in between dimensions or that liminal space that's there? But the dream witches know how to walk and manipulate these spaces. They know how to go into these places and out of them because they have that demonic power to do that. They are not only in this physical world, but they also have a foot in the spiritual world as well. And when you do that, you have powers to do things. And you can even invade people's dreams. Now, a lot of people ask me over the year, what would you do if you could go into somebody's dream? Think about it a moment. Chantelle, if you could put yourself in somebody's dream and you really wanted to either do them harm or do them good, most of the time you're out to do harm, unfortunately, because you're invading that person. You're actually, it's the ultimate invasion of prophecy, to touch somebody's mind or to get in. And that's what you're doing when you get into their dreams, because that's where dreams come from. Your mind, okay? That's where they originate, in your consciousness. And they're in your subconsciousness. Actually, that's where they exist in that realm. And I'm not going to get into the psychological aspects of this today, but it is really freaky when you think about it. But I have actually dealt with demonic forces with my mind, because that's where they attack you first. That's what they come after. I don't think they can actually read your deepest thoughts, but I think they are super, super sensitive and can touch that a lot of times and know what you're thinking. Just like an animal. You ever have an animal like a dog or a cat? They can, without ever saying a word, they can pick up on your mood. They know whether you're angry or whether you're sad or you're happy or whatever. Animals are very sensitive to this. So are these things. These demonic forces are very super sensitive, even more so than animals are, to pick up on what you're thinking, you know. And there's one thing you got to remember about things like dream witches and evil spirits or whatever. They know what scares you. They know how to push your buttons. They know how to manipulate you. And that is the number one thing that makes them so downright dangerous. They know how to do it to you, okay? And they don't hesitate. And that's what the dream witch can do. If she gets into your dreams, she can influence you to what happens when you wake up the next morning. Yeah, you could go the next morning and go down to breakfast and, you know, say, well, you know, I had a really weird dream last night that I did this or something. Maybe I ought to try that, or maybe I ought to do that. So you can be manipulated through your dreams, you know. They know this. They know this. They know how to influence the human mind. And that's what makes them so dangerous. They know how to, you know, they know how to push your buttons. And that's what the dream witch seeks to do a lot of times, to attack you this way by screwing around with your mind, by screwing with your thought processes. And, you know, you might remember I mentioned the last show we did on this, that you could walk up to a witch and, like, say, go to her house and knock on the door and confront her about something. And then walk away. I had people tell me this, okay? You walk away and get back to your car and say, well, what in the world did we talk about? I don't remember. She can take that away from you. She can have that influence over your mind with her mind over your mind. We call this mind over matter kind of thing, okay? They seek this power to do this. They can manipulate your mind. And that's not good either, okay? I don't know about you, Chantelle, but I don't want my mind manipulated, okay? I don't want to go there. That's scary to think about, you know, because what kind of, you know, what kind of a defense can you have against that? You have to develop defenses. And I've talked with people about this over the years. The mindset that you have, and you can't let fear overwhelm you in this, because that's the weapon they use against you. Don't you understand? That's the number one weapon they use in the dreams when they attack you. Fear, 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 because it cancels out faith. It cancels out your confidence. It does a lot of things to you. Fear is the number one weapon that they use in witchcraft. That's the number one thing. That's the number one knife they use to cut you with. Put it that way. Fear is what they use. You got to guard against fear. And I've talked to people about this over the years, and I have been in some very, very, my own self, very fearful situations, okay, where I could have bucked it and run, okay? There was some, you know, situations where I said, you know, what am I doing here? You know, kind of thing. What's going on here? But you got to take your fear, and everybody has fear, okay? We can't fight that. You're going to have fear. That's what makes you human, okay? If somebody tells you they're not fearful, they're not human. I'm sorry, but there's something else. I don't know what they are, but they're not. Because humans get afraid. That's fear, okay? But you've got to use that fear. You got to turn it around and use it for your own advantage, not disadvantage. Fear wants to put you at a disadvantage. So you want to use it the other way. You want to turn fear around and use it to your advantage. You want fear to motivate you the right way and not the wrong way, okay? Because, you know, if you're in a bad situation and I come up and I try to help you and I say, well, I was going to tell I can't help you. I'm scared. I can't do this. Well, I'm not helping you, and I'm definitely not helping me in this situation. I have become ineffective because of fear. We must not let fear make us ineffective. We can't let it rule over us. If we have fear, we need to use it the right way. We need to, you know, try to fight against it and use it, turn around and let it motivate us in the right ways. Okay. And most of the time, the right way is not to run from what you fear, but to face it. Face your fears. And half of your fear, now listen to this very closely. H.P. Lovecraft said this: the greatest fear of mankind is the fear of the unknown. Okay? Once you understand what you're facing, Once you understand what it is, like if you're up against a dream witch or you're up against some kind of skinwalker, once you understand what it is you're facing, that takes half of its power away from it. Okay, that takes half of the fear away from it because now you know what it is. Now you know what it is. So half of that fear is gone. So you can deal with the other half of that fear, and that's facing what it is that you fear. It is much better to face what you fear than to run from it because that will never get you anywhere except further on down the road. And it will not give you the solution you need most of the time when you're facing something that you're afraid of. You know, you got to face up to it. I tell this to children a lot. You know, I've had children over the years. I've done a lot of, sessions in schools with kids telling stories and stuff, which I always love to do. And the kids, I'll ask them a question. Are you afraid of the dark? Are you afraid of the dark? And they say, oh, yes, I'm scared of the dark. I don't like the dark. The dark scares me. I said, well, here's something you got to remember. Next time you're in the dark, think about this. What is the dark? What is the dark? And they said, what is it? And I said, I'll tell you what it is. It's nothing. Darkness is nothing but the absence of light. So what are you afraid of? Nothing. That's the way you got to look at the dark. Okay? And that way you can handle the dark a little bit better, The only thing that ancient man was afraid of the dark for was that he couldn't see good in it. You don't see what's coming after you in the dark that way. So no wonder you're afraid of it. Definitely, you got to be careful. But if you know what's out there in the darkness, if you know what you're facing, that's half of the battle already won. You got to look at it from a better point of view. It's like looking at a glass. Is it half empty or half full? It depends on your outlook on it, And that's the way it goes with the dark and the darkness and the things of darkness. That's why I say, if you're scared of witches or if you're scared of vampires or something, you need to go research them. Understand what it is you're afraid of. Get into the deep aspects of it and know what it is and take that unknown factor away from it. Then you will see what it really is and you will not be so afraid of it. It will not have power over you. And that's the way this darkness works. And the dream witches know this. This fear that they use, this darkness that they use against you. They know that you're scared of that. You're fearful of it, and that they manipulate you with that. They know it. If we've talked about this before. If a witch doctor puts a curse on you, Chantelle, the first thing he's going to do is let you know he put a curse on you. So that it can start working on your mind right here where it starts. That's where that curse goes. Immediately you start, I'm cursed. I'm going to die. I've only got 3 days left to live. It starts working on your mind. You will self-fulfill that prophecy if you're not careful. They know that. They know they can manipulate you that way. That's part of their power. Okay. And once you take that unknown factor away, though, you take a lot of their power away from them. I've had people ask me over the years, what can I do to protect myself against dream witches and things like that? What can I do to keep myself from being attacked by these things? And I say, it's all a matter of the mind. That's where it starts. That's where it starts and ends, my friends. It's all a matter of the mind. It's that overcoming that fear that they want to put in you. It's overcoming that and facing it for what it truly is and saying, hey, I can fight this. I know what I'm fighting now, and I can face it. And this is where it begins. There are a lot of other little things you can do. There are other things you can do, but this is where it begins, in the mind. And that's the mindset that you have against this. I have actually had a witch one time curse me to death. Stood there and cursed blue gopher dust in my face and said, you've got 3 days to live. And I laughed. I said, well, I'll see you a week after next. Because I'm not going to believe that stuff. I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to give you the authority to do that. We have authority over these things. Even as a Christian, I believe that without a doubt. I have authority over these things. I've been given that, not through my own offices. I've been given that by my creator. We have authority over these situations, no matter what it is, whether it's witchcraft or whatever it is. You don't have to take this. You know, I've had a lot of kids talk about bullying. You know, they get bullied, and we've all been bullied. We were all done that way, I think, without a doubt, in school, in certain situations. And how we dealt with that bully, though, is the important thing. It's not the bully, it's how we deal with it. That's the main thing. You know, the bully's going to do what they want to do. There's not a lot we can do to stop them. Okay, that's just the way it goes. But it's how we deal with it, you know. We can either let them have power over us, or we can take authority over that situation. I have told this to people worldwide that have come to me with demonic problems. What can I do about this? Well, I'm scared this time. I said, look, you got to have this number one key, okay? And here's the key. You don't have to take this off of them, because you don't have to let them have that power over you. You can take that away from them. You can say, hey, I'm not going to believe you. I'm not going to participate with you. I'm not going to be complicit with you. I'm not going to cooperate. You don't have to give them any. The only power they have is what you give them. You got to remember, that goes with demons and human beings, whatever the situation is. The only power they have is what you give them, or allow them to take over you. Don't do it. You don't have to. And you know, the number one way to get rid of a witch, I've had a lot of people ask me, how do you kill a witch? How do you get rid of a witch and all that stuff? The old-fashioned way was that you call them by their Christian name. You call them out loud publicly by their Christian name and say, just like I was going to say, Chantelle, Meyburgh, I declare you to be a witch in front of God and man on this day right here and now. That takes your power away from you, and pretty soon you will supposedly wither up and die after that, okay? That's the one way you combat witches. And they say that's the way you get rid of skinwalkers. You call them by name, publicly declare them as witches. It takes their power away from them. Why? Because their power is secrecy. That's where their power lies, in the secrecy that allows them to do the things they do. Once you expose them, you take supposedly their power away from them. Isn't that very close to what I just said? The only power they have is what you give them. It's very important that you remember that, because that's what works against, especially against dark spiritual entities. Okay, so if you today are being harassed by some kind of evil spirit, some kind of demonic spirit, you can speak to that thing and say, look, I don't have to take this off of you. You know, I'm a child of God. I don't have to take this from you. I'm taking your power away from you. You're not going to do anything to me. I'm taking authority over you and this situation right now. I'm kicking you out of here. When you do this, and I'm not saying you do it in a wimpy kind of way, so would you please leave, you know, don't bother me. No, you got to be commanding. You got to be authoritative. They recognize authority. I have never met a demon yet that did not recognize authority. Not a single one. I've met a lot of them. A lot of human demons too, by the way. But I have met a lot of them, okay? And they recognize authority. And that's why God gave you authority over these things. Use it. Don't let them use and abuse you. You use it against them. You use that authority that you have. Believe in that. Trust in it. That's faith. That's where faith begins. You know, faith is like sitting in a chair. When you sit down in a chair, like that chair you're sitting in right now, you know, Chantelle, you had faith that it was going to hold you up and not collapse. And you didn't even think about it. You just sat down in the chair. That's faith. That's what faith is, okay? That's a very simple explanation. Faith is trusting things that you can't even see or don't even know, you know, because that chair could have collapsed on you. But you had faith enough to know it was going to hold you up. You didn't even think about it. You just sit down in the chair. And that's the way true, simple, childlike faith is. And that's all it's required of you, to have this authority over these dark things and dark nature. But now, getting back to the spider women, okay, let's look at them for a minute. and we're getting close to time here, and I want to cover them a minute. The spider women were believed by the American indigenous peoples to be that certain woman that was the opposite of the one I mentioned earlier, the woman that was healing and helpful, usually the wife of the medicine man. You could come to her for counseling. She was a good. The opposite of her was the spider woman. There was always some woman in the tribe that you didn't mess with. Some woman that you were scared of, or there was whispering about. She was something different. She was what you would say a prototype for a witch. Okay. And she supposedly had the power to turn into a spider. Now, she could do a little spider if she wanted to, but most of the time she would do a big spider. And I'm talking about like the size of a cow spider. Think about this a minute, okay? That's not good. All right. And there's a story I was going to tell you today. I was going to relate to you about a guy, and this was out in the West somewhere. I think in one of the western states of the United States, where one night he heard something going on outside in the barn. Well, he thought it was maybe bobcat or something trying to eat his chickens or whatever the situation was. So he went out to the barn. He was looking around in the barn, wondering why the cows were messing around. And he looks up in the rafters. And in the shadows and the darkness up in there was the biggest spider he had ever seen in his life. Now, I'm not talking about one like this. We're talking like as big as a cow looking down at him, okay? And it had already attacked one of his cows, and he was dead, laying there, drained completely out of blood and everything, body fluids. I mean, this thing, he said the cow looked like an empty sack crumbled up. Now, if you've been around cows are pretty big animals, okay? I have never seen one crumble up like a sack. I don't think I want to, but this thing had all its bones broken. It was just crushed up. And the spider did that, supposedly. So what's the first thing he does? He turns and runs. He goes back in the house, and he calls, the only guy I can think of, he calls his minister. And he says that, there's something out here I've never seen the likes of this before. It's the big giant spiders out in my barn. It's done killed one of my cows. What is this thing? So the minister said, oh, well, you're probably dealing with what we call a spider woman, a spider witch. And she's probably out for a midnight snack or something, And he said, well, what can I do about it? He said, here's what you do. So you you unload a shotgun shell and you fill it back with rock salt. Bring it to me and let me bless it. So he fixed the shell up and he brought it to the priest, and the priest blessed it. He said, now you take it back, put it in your shotgun, and you shoot that spider with this. And see what happens. So he does all this. He goes back, and sure enough, the spider's still out in the barn, He goes back and he shoots it, and it's boom, it's gone. It just disappears in a puff of smoke, and that's it, But the next day, his neighbor was found dead in her yard. The next day, found dead in her yard. And he always said that she was the spider witch. She was the spider woman that was in his barn that night, because that's where she dies from that rock salt hitting her. It is a known fact that rock salt, supposedly, if it's loaded with a shell, can do things against spiritual entities. Matter of fact, I have a couple of them in my monster hunting kit, okay, just in case. Rock salt shells, okay. It can supposedly work against spiritual things more so than physical. If I were to shoot you with rock salt, it's probably not going to kill you. It's going to hurt like the dickens, but it's not going to kill you, but it's supposedly death to a spiritual thing, okay? That's the way it supposedly works. But they got to be blessed. That's what gives them the power, supposedly, over the dark spiritual forces. But this is a fascinating story, kind of like, you shoot this spider and get rid of it that way, and your neighbor turns up dead the next morning. 2 and 2 plus, equals 4, I guess. But anyway, that's very strange. But I have run into a similar story about the Lalachusa. You know what the Lalachusa is? The Lalachusa is the owl witch. And there is a big belief in Mexico about this, especially in New Mexico, Arizona, and the western parts of the United States. especially in Mexico, that owls are witches. They do not like to see owls around. Okay, I've run into owls a lot. I've had a lot of freaky encounters with owls, but I don't think it had anything to do with witches. But it was kind of weird. But owls, and I like owls. They're kind of one of my favorite animals. They are definitely the symbol of wisdom. You know, Athena, the goddess Athena, that was her. That was her symbol, the symbol of wisdom. And anyway, in Mexico, they are scared of owls. Oh, they don't like owls to be around. They will try to kill them and get rid of them, which is bad on the owl, by the way. Owls are very beneficial animals. They are out to kill pests like snakes and rats and stuff like that. You know, if you had a farm, you definitely would want some owls in your barn. You know, you would want owls hanging around because they are very beneficial animals. But Mexicans do not believe that. They believe that the owl most of the time is the La Lechuza, the owl witch, a woman that can turn into an owl. And the only way to get rid of her is salt. Salt, throw salt at her, and that supposedly will get rid of. So if you ever see people in Mexico throwing salt at an owl, you know what's going on, okay? They're trying to get rid of the witch. They believe that without a doubt that is a witch. Matter of fact, I actually seen this I think it's on TikTok not long ago, where somebody filmed this in a church in Mexico, and they are having a choir practice thing going on here. They're singing in church, and I mean, they are singing loud and hard to beat the band. And what you do, the camera pans up into the rafters of the church, and there's an owl sitting up there. Okay, so what they're doing is singing these gospel songs to try to get rid of this owl witch. Okay, and here's the funny thing: the owl is doing this. He's enjoying the music. It was really funny, but there you go with owls. But if you run into owls in Mexico and they're throwing salt at them, you know what's going on with that. Okay, but supposedly same thing with the spider women. Now, spider women, of course, if you could contact one of these spider women and get her to find out something for you. Like, if I want to say, I want to know what Chantelle's up, what's she going to be doing tomorrow, I would get my spider woman buddy to turn into a little spider and go into Chantelle's house and listen to what she's doing and find out what her plans are and just intrude in her household, okay, and spy on her. And people believe this to a great extent, that some of these spiders you find in your house are sent there as spies, okay, to find out what you're up to. So people would never kill a spider. Oh, that was bad luck. You don't kill a spider in your house. You don't do that. There were a couple of things like that. You don't kill crickets in your house. You ever have a cricket in your house, you're supposed to remove them, very carefully. But you don't kill them because that will take all your good luck away from you, supposedly. That's the way it goes with crickets. And they believe that if you killed a spider that was actually a spider woman, something, that would be a bad luck thing to do. You just didn't do that. That's like breaking a mirror kind of thing, So they would catch the spider and remove it, take it outside and let it go. They would not allow a spider to be killed in the house. Flies are okay. But the spider, you didn't do that because it might be somebody and not a spider. Okay, that's just what they believed. That was a great belief amongst that too, especially in the Appalachian Mountains. And there is a very famous story in the Twilight Zone TV series about a witch in the Appalachian Mountains. The name of the story is Jezebel. Jezebel is the name of it. If you ever get a chance to watch this, it's very good. She turns into a jaguar. She's a real Appalachian witch. But she also spies on the wedding of her ex-fiancé by turning into a spider and showing up on the wedding bouquet as his intended. Really freaky stuff. So they are able to turn not only into animals, but insects as well. And the spider, of course, is their number one thing. And you know what the Bible says about spiders? The Bible talks about bees and ants and spiders. They said that ants and bees are a nation and a people. And that's very much that is very true. They do act like a civilization in a way, the way especially bees and ants. Ants have a war and they take prisoners and slaves. Yeah, and bees are very smart. I've told this about bees before. You got to have two openings in a beehive. Bees come in one door and they go out the other door. You never know that? That's true. They only have one door they go in and one door they go out. Enter and exit, okay? And did you know that they will post a guard at each door to guard that hive? But the guard also has a second responsibility. He sits in the door and does his wings like this all day long. What's he doing? This is smart, folks. Now, I'm not making this stuff up, okay? Bees are smart. They are actually air conditioning that hive. The bee at the front entrance is looking out, and he's got his wings going this way. He's pulling the air in. The bee at the exit is looking at, he's pulling it back out the exit, so it's circulating the air through the hive. They have air conditioning. Yeah. Okay, believe it or not, that's the way the bees go. And so it is also called about the spider. The Bible says the spider is a wondrous thing. It weaves its web in the palace of kings and in the lowliest hut. And that's the way the spider goes. But the one thing they feared about the spider, and I'm going to wrap this up for you. The one thing they feared about the spider, the dream witches and all that, the dream witch could be a spider in your dream and weave a web of nightmares. So this was the number one way they attacked you in your dream, by giving you nightmares, okay, and making you have horrible, fearful dreams of things. They would weave the web of nightmares, and that's why they fear the dream witches and the spider witches and the things they could do, because they were always up to no good. But like I said earlier in the program, the number one way to combat them is to take that fear that you may have of these things and turn it back against them. I'm going to say one more thing here at the closing today. If you practice any type of dark, evil witchcraft or magic, there is a spiritual law over that. And that law states that no matter what negative thing you do, you will get that back. If I put a curse on you, I get a little bit of that curse back on me. Or if I put some kind of evil spell on you, I get a little bit of that spell back on me. That's the price you pay for doing bad things, okay? So that is the law I talk about of positivity and negativity. If you do positive in your life, do good things, help people, love people, do the things you need to do, live the positive life that you need to live, you will produce positivity and not negativity. Most of the time, you're going to get positive stuff back, but life, of course, is always going to throw negative stuff at you. That's the way that goes. But you will have a preponderance of positive if you produce positive and not negative. But on the other hand, if you produce negativity, what do you expect to get back? You're going to get back negative results. You're going to get back bad things. And when you do bad things like placing curses and evil spells on people, you're going to get some of that back, especially if that person turns it back on you. If they turn it back on you, you get it all back. So that's the risk you run when you practice black witchcraft. You got to remember there's always a price for whether you do good or bad. You're going to pay a price for it, whatever it may be. And that's the lesson, the number one lesson, number one rule of whatever kind of witchcraft you're dealing with. It's going to eventually come back to haunt you in one way. Karma, as they call it, is going to always come and find you. And that's one snake that will bite you always in the butt if you're not careful. Definitely karma.
Well, karma is not really a snake. Karma is really your own actions that are returned. So
yeah, it is.
If that's a snake biting you, then hell, you got to question what you've been putting out there. But I say that with the wink, but it's true though, because that's all karma is. Karma is cause and effect, because it's the ripple effect, literally. What you put in, what you've put out, what you put in, right, is what you put out through your actions, words, deeds,
Negative
whatever
or
it might
positive.
be.
Yeah, negative or
Exactly.
positive. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, positive karma, karma it's not a negative thing. And this is what I say a lot. It's cause and effect. So pretty much what you put in is what you get out, but it's not just actions. It's thoughts, it's ideas, it's intentions, it's all of these things that create up the energy. If you have a whole lot of negative energy in your body through negative thoughts, all of these nasty things sitting in your head, but you're so sweet on the outside, you see, that's not going to be true. Or when you go out and you're this amazing person, but you come home and you're beating your wife and kids and whatever it might be, that's also the disparity. And it actually breaks my heart to see how many people love crushing spiders. I've got to tell you that. We as human beings have this idea that if we fear something, we've got to kill it. We have this kill culture. If we don't like it, we must kill it. That's the problem. That's negative karma. You're creating negative karma for yourself right there. And the problem with all this witchcraft and black magic and stuff is they've used animals and insects like black cats, like spiders, like what else is there? Owls, whatever. They've used all these creatures, and they've used, because let us never ever forget, everything that these creatures of the night do is take what God has given us freely and inverted it. So they've taken the wisdom of the owl and they've used that power, because the owl, what is a bird that obviously it's a nocturnal bird. It hunts at night, it preys at night, it's awake at night. So it has the essence of what it needs to see in the dark, which is
Well,
exactly what these creatures of the night
Chantelle,
want.
just recently, in recent times, people in France would go around Halloween and pick up all the black cats they could find, put them in a bag, and throw them in the river just because they were black cats. That's the way
Well,
mankind works. What it doesn't
well,
understand, what it fears, it wants to destroy. You know, that's
that's
horrible
exactly
to
what
think
I'm saying.
about.
It's this kill culture. If you rescue a little spider and you
Yeah.
actually look at it, you actually watch it, it is the most
And look at the
fascinating
spider. The
little
spider
creature.
is a very beneficial thing, Chantel. Look what he does. It kills insects that get in the. I wouldn't mind a spider being in my house as long as he's getting rid of the mosquitoes, stuff like that. They have a purpose. These things have a purpose, and when we interrupt that purpose, for whatever reasons we have, that's not a good thing. It never works out good. That's why, we need to have mercy on these things. We need to have some kind of little bit of mercy and forgiving kindness to all kinds of animals, because they're here for a reason, just like we are. You know, that's the way I like to look at it.
Well, we literally all cohabiting on the planet. The most beautiful thing is when you understand, you see, when you
Mm-hmm.
understand that nature is God in action. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
spiders are God in action. Snakes are God in action. Owls are God in action, right? The thing is, we as human beings have not learned to be discerning when it comes to these things. Yes, of course, the witches and whatever it is will sometimes use black magic and use these innocent creatures to fulfill their disgusting whatever it is, desires, needs, purposes. But that does not mean that every spider you see now deserves the death warrant. That does not mean that every snake you see deserves the death warrant. Snakes are incredibly important creatures, spiritually as well as physically. But what do? Because we don't like them, we kill them. And every time we kill a snake or kill an innocent creature just because we fear it, We're killing a part of our own soul. Please know that. You have a right to actually defend yourself, yes, in self-defense. If something's coming for you or your kid or your dog or what, yes, absolutely. But if you just going, oh, there's a spider, kill it, you are killing a part of yourself and you're accountable for that innocent death. Just because the spider is tiny and different to you doesn't mean its life is any less important than yours. You see, that's the problem with us. We think because we're bigger and we have dominion, which we don't really, we're actually supposed to have stewardship, right? We decide that we can kill everything and destroy it and hunt it and eat it as much as what we want to. You see, when we do that, that is bad karma. We are creating bad karma. If animals had a devil, that devil would be human beings. And I'm not just talking about a few animals.
Definitely. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so we have to understand. Yeah,
I
we
mentioned
have
that.
to understand, Dennis. Carry
I
on.
mentioned that the other day. That animals are afraid of us. Animals have a built-in fear of humanity, and can you blame them? Okay, can you blame them? I would be
No.
afraid of them too. Okay, yeah.
Well, I mean,
But
if we aren't killing it because we're scared of it, we're killing it because we want to eat it. I mean, and that's also creating bad karma. We've got to understand when we take a life of another
yep.
living being, we have to give something back in return. We are as guilty as the cabal when it comes to the animal species because we do to the animals what the cabal does to us. And that's hypocrisy right there. And we don't even see it. We can't even see what hypocrites we are when we do that. This is what I'm saying. Humans, we don't even realize what we are doing. And this is why I say these things. It doesn't make me popular, but this is how energy works. We have to be accountable for every living creature that's within our vicinity, whether it's a child, an animal, an insect, a bird. We have a responsibility to cohabit and let things live their life because everything here is living its life as it chooses to live. And that's God's creation and it's God's karma or God's sacred contract with that little spider or that little whatever. And right? We don't have a right to take the life of other creatures. We don't, because it's God's creation. And we don't understand why God has created a spider. If you're scared of a spider, you must understand there's something in you. Because of, let's look at what a spider represents. You see, spiders, you just look at spiders and they're negative, dream, weenie, witchy, blah, blah, nonsense. Spiders are dream weavers too. Think about that. Think about the miracle a spider creates with a net. That's the web of life. Why do you think the cabal has targeted spiders? Because it has something in it that has an innate understanding of how the web of life knits together, like a spider catches its prey, whatever, in that tiny, miraculously woven net that it has. You see, why do you think they try and hybridize us with spiders? Because they're so intelligent. So when we realize that, we got to understand it's our own fear that is creating our own bad karma. So our fear is exactly that. Our fear creates the schisms for these entities to enter our dreams or haunt our souls or whatever it is that happens. You create the opening for that to happen. It's up to you to close it. It's up to you through resonance, vibration, frequency, compassion, empathy, confidence. All of these things are what grows your vibration. Then you wouldn't even want to think about killing a spider ever again. You will want to talk to it instead, because that's what I do with them. I talk to spiders, I talk to snakes, I talk to mice, I talk to birds, I talk to them all. They all have a resonance, they all have a way of communicating. And if we realize that, then we are out of hell. If we still want to kill things that are innocent, a part of us is being trapped in hell, really, because as you say, the mindset of hell begins with your thoughts. And we have to look at each and every thought that keeps us entrapped. If we are fearing something, so we must therefore kill it without knowing what its intention is, a part of you is still caught up in hell.
That's
Mindset.
the problem with mankind, Chantelle. We always try to kill what we don't understand or what we're afraid of. We try, I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, it's a snake, kill it, kill it." No, no. They're very beneficial snakes that you want around. A lot of people don't understand that everything in this world and on this planet has a reason for being here, just like you and I do. The spider has a reason to be here. The snake has a reason to be here. We have a possum in the south here. The possum is an ugly looking thing. It's a marsupial, by the way. It's very much like a kangaroo. It has a pouch. It has a very important role. Did you know it eats its weight in ticks every day? Ticks now, okay? Who wants ticks around, right? The possum takes care of them. He has a very beneficial role to play,
Yeah.
And that's why I always say I hate to see them get hit by cars and all that. I hate to see them get hit because they're very, very beneficial things. I had a possum. Let me tell you this. I had a possum living in my yard for several years. We lived together pretty well. I didn't bother him. He didn't bother me. He went about his business. I went about mine. I would leave him stuff out every now and then, too, because I think he's still out there. I really don't know because they only come out at night. But I would get pictures of him on my porch, and he would come up and eat cat food, once in a while. But, people don't understand things that you don't understand. They want to kill it or they want to destroy it and they don't want it around. I mean, that's just the way superstition works. That's the bad thing about superstition. You don't understand it, kill it. That's the way they look at it, And according to the Bible, the very first job ever given to mankind, God said, "Here are the animals, name them and take care of them." But boy, we sure have fallen down on our job. We did not do what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to be the caretakers, but unfortunately we don't.
And it's like Gandhi says, Gandhi says you can judge a nation by the way in which it treats its animals. And again, it's not just your cat and your dog and your cute little fluffy domestic animals. There's an entire planet of living species out there, of so many different species that are all here. And we tend to want to destroy, and because we feel we have the right to, but we don't. And I think that's one of the first things we as humans need to learn, Dennis, is that we need to learn compassion. Compassion is not just for the kids that are being trafficked. Of course it is as well. But compassion is for every living being. And that every life matters. And that's the thing, because we, as we say, the whole ecosystem is made up by God's divine hand. And God's divine hand has created this entire ecosystem. There's a saying that goes, the human being is a very insane species because we pray to an invisible God, yet we destroy the nature which is God made visible. So nature is God made visible, and the very nature is the thing we destroy. So we are actually destroying
God
nature.
is very
We're destroying
visible in a lot of
creation.
things.
Absolutely. God is visible in everything. God is visible.
Yeah.
If you prepare to see God in everything as opposed to the devil in everything, you're going to have a very different experience in life. You're going to have an incredibly different experience, because even when something really shitty happens, you can say, what do I need to learn through this? Show me, God, what you are trying to teach me. As opposed to, how did this happen to me? Why me? Oh my God, I'm suing them. We've got to understand there's a reason why we attract things into our lives. Everything that comes into our life is our attraction. And we have to understand that. That's the first part of taking spiritual responsibility. Because if we haven't understood that yet, we have not understood how the laws of energy work. And this planet is governed by certain energetic laws. And most of us are we're unaware of them because, again, that's part of what is taken from us. That is part of what we are not taught by the controllers. We are not aware of how sovereign and powerful and what amazing, creative, manifesting masterpieces we are, each and every one of us. That's the first thing they do in SRA, in any type of abuse of a child, is destroy that connectedness to their sovereign divine creator that says, I am aligned with my creator and miracles are the order of the day for me. And that's our God-given human gift and right. But we've forgotten that. And now when people like myself come along, and I've remembered not everything, but I'm remembering, then I get accused of being a witch. And I'm going, babe, all I've done is put faith over fear. The things you're always praying about and obviously not doing is what I'm doing. So we have to act in accordance with the written scriptures. We have to act in accordance with God's word to us. Not read the scriptures and then be too fearful to act on them, or find all sorts of excuses why we're not doing the things we know we should be doing, because that keeps us in hell. Hell is in the mind. It begins in the mind. Exactly what you were saying. That's exactly how the demons, the dream witches, the spider monkeys, not spider monkeys, the spider witches, Spiderwoman witches, whatever, all of them, everything, it doesn't matter what you look at it as, it doesn't matter what shape it takes. It cannot get to you if you are in coherence with God. It cannot. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Doesn't matter how it shapeshifts. So all of these things become all of these different labels or shapes they take. Therefore, then become null and void, if you will, because you are now aligned with Christ, the Holy Spirit, God, your divine creator, and you are sparked by God's divine light. And when you are sparked by God's divine light, those things cannot and will never touch you. And it's true what you say, Dennis. So when we change that mindset, that coming into the mind, right, and entering the mind through the dreams and blah, 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 when we're unconscious, and fear keeps us there. Fear keeps us trapped. Fear of it happening. Fear of it potentially happening. The fear porn we listen to all the time is what keeps us there. Let's find the ways to get out. Let's not look back to all the things that keep us in the fear porn. And it's true, Tabby, the biggest war is between your ears. Indeed it is. And that's with you yourself, right? We know that. You are actually standing in your own way of reaching your divine wisdom. Anyway, that was great, Dennis. Thank you. I actually enjoyed hearing about that, especially the spider women. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting what shape these things take, right?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the spider women, women were considered to be the backbone of the family. They are what holds the family together. But they also weave the cloth that they used and they made the clothes. That was part of their responsibility. So I could see them as being, connected to the spider, because the spider is a weaver too, The spider is the one that develops the intricate things that need to be done. That's another interesting aspect of all of that. to me. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And, of course, you are aware of the very famous myth of Arachnid. Arachnid was a very famous weaver of cloth, and she bragged that, "Oh, I can weave even better than the gods can weave." And so I think it was Athena that put the curse and turned her into a spider. Said, "If you're so smart, you will weave from now on as a spider." So that's where arachnid. That's where we get that word arachnid from, the very old Greek legend of that. But the interesting part of all that is she is also not just a victim; she is a creator of these things. She is part of the creative process, just like the spider creates a web. And I've seen, and I've admired spider webs. I don't like to get them on me. Okay, spiders don't scare me. I don't like to get spider webs. I'm gonna get them off because they make very good sticky stuff. Okay, but look at the intricate designs that they developed on that just out of nothing. Somewhere that starts in the spider mind that they got to do this. That begins and they build upon it. So it is a very, very creative process. And so when I think of the spider, I think of creativity. That's what I think of.
Well, that's exactly what it is the creation. You see, what the Cabal does not have is creativity, because they have no soul. They've stolen what they can, and they're using that, and they're creating from that. They don't have that creativity, the creation spirit, which is exactly what the spider has. And of course, where does creation begin? We dream. There's nothing wrong with sitting and dreaming your new book into existence, or new plan, or holiday with your kids. That's exactly, think about Einstein. How did Einstein create the light bulb? He imagined it. So it's the imagination. Without our imagination, we are nothing. We have to create with our imagination. And the spider teaches us that. Now, that's what they've stolen from the spider, because they have inverted everything. This we see, there's not one part of creation that they haven't tampered with, from what I can see. And they've taken innocent, beautiful creatures and they've turned them into these mythical monsters that now everyone has to fear and kill because they are so evil. Now, the minute someone does that, again, it says to me, you still tapped in to the evil thought process around that, which is what you've got to get out of, because that's not true. That's the bad karma. And the more of us that know that and change that, not just know it, but act on that and change it, that's when the world starts changing. Kathy, thank you so much. Appreciate your super sticker. Thank you very much. Anyway, Dennis, always fun talking to you, and we will do it again in a few weeks' time. I'm wondering if there's anything you want to maybe round off with. There are banana spiders, are very pretty. They're huge. Look, I don't say I love spiders crawling all over me. Oh, hell no. But I certainly don't hurt them.
Well, I always liked Spider-Man. He was one of my favorites, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
But I always liked him. And he was human. He was. Although he was Spider, he was very human too. That's what I always liked about him. He had human problems with his girlfriend and stuff like that. So anyway, he was always. But I think, definitely we need to definitely show more respect for these things and understand where, the ancient peoples were coming from on some of this stuff too. What drove their superstitions, their legends, and their folklore. Because our folklore is what we are. That's what we are. It's what we are comprised of. And it's really always good when we try to understand this and get as much of an understanding as possible. But if you go out in your barn tonight and there's a big giant spider out there, you call me, okay? I want to see that. But I don't think I want to get too close to it, though, just to be able to say that. Take a picture. Anyway, I was going to invite everybody over to my channel if you want to look into some more of these interesting things. I have a channel called Hunting the Shadows, our YouTube podcast channel, and I'm on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Friday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Matter of fact, I've got one show coming up. We'll be doing some book reviews. So we always look into some things like that. So definitely, I'm gonna have to get a copy of your book and do a book review on it. Definitely, Chantelle. And
Cool.
that's in the future, absolutely. But I'll just invite everybody over there. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me at denniswcarroll.com. Like I say, I do consultation services. If you just want to tell me a story, if you got a giant spider living in your bathroom, you can tell me about that too, whatever the situation. And that's denniswcarroll.com. And my books are available for purchase on Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. Thank you.
Perfect. And Dennis's details, as you can see, are scrolling down the bottom. And if you missed that, then they're going to be in the description area. So pay Dennis's channel a visit. His website, books, amazing. Very, very informative indeed. So Dennis, thank you again so much. We will see you back in, I think, 2 weeks. We'll just have to check what date that is, but we will let you know, because obviously with holidays and New Year's and Christmases and what have you. But just watch the calendar, guys, and then we will let you know when we will be broadcasting again. Thank you all for joining us, and always a pleasure to have you guys with us on a Thursday evening, and it's warm in Africa.
Hey.
You can see I'm happy. Okay, guys, God bless you all. Take good care, and I'll see you the next time. Cheers.